Yes, guys, what's happening? And welcome back to the channel and welcome to tonight's live stream, where with Chelsea out of action until the 5th of February, where the fourth round of the FA Cup against Plymouth Argyle will be the next fixture. We're going to be talking all things Arsenal tonight. But before we get into that, please do smash a like on the video and please do subscribe to the channel. If you're tuning in live, we're going to be watching back and you're not subscribed, please do click that subscribe button. Appreciate all the support, and we're looking to head to 300 subscribers by the end of the month. So we're 25 away. So every little helps. So please do click that subscribe button. But yeah, as you can see tonight, I'm joined by Arsenal season ticket holder Luke Webb. Webby, thanks for coming back on the channel, mate. It's been a while. We're going to talk all things Arsenal, which is obviously your specialist subject as such. Let's kick off with the transfer window then. I won't remind you of what a painful month January's been so far on the pitch, but we'll get straight into the window. And the hunt for a centre forward is obviously key for Arsenal, perhaps in their success of getting the top four this season or not. We're going to start with a player who could be on his way out. Obviously, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. I don't know if he divides opinion amongst supporters. Been stripped of the captaincy. He's obviously had disciplinary issues with Arteta during his time at the club. Very much been frozen out of recent weeks. Again, reports of was he partying with Mario Lemina on Gabon duty, when he was sent home. His health as well. There's been potential health issues as well, but they've all been cleared up. Where do you stand on Aubameyang? First of all, how the club and Arteta have handled it before we get into his future.
Yeah, I guess firstly, you just mentioned it, but he returned from AFCON with some heart trouble, but I think that's all been cleared by the club now, which is good, because that's always a bit worrying. But on his future, I don't see a way back from him with Arsenal. The squad are flying out to Dubai in this mini break for some a warm weather training camp, and I don't think he's going on that from the reports. And based on that, I don't see a way back from him. I think a way back for him. I think the bridges have been burnt. I think he's kind of crossed Arteta one too many times, whether it be timekeeping, general discipline, non-negotiables, as Arteta likes to call it. So yeah, I think he'll be on his way out. If we can sell him in January, then I think Arsenal would. Obviously quite hard to find a buyer because of his high wages. Otherwise, I'd imagine him to sit it out till the summer and then be on his way for a move in the summer.
How do you feel about that as a fan? Do you feel that are you behind Arteta in that decision? You know, if he's got non-negotiables at the club, it doesn't matter who you are. If you don't stick to them, then you'll be punished. Or is part of you disappointed that actually probably still is the best centre forward, and maybe you'd like to think there's a road to redemption?
I would tend to back Arteta on this one. My first reaction when it happened, can't remember exactly who we were playing, but the game where he was first left out that started all this, I was pretty frustrated and wanted him involved. But you've got to back Arteta. You don't know what's gone on behind the scenes. Arteta clearly has standards, and if those standards aren't being upheld, especially as club captain, it's probably not good enough. We went on a brilliant run for a while with Aubameyang out the side, and everything was rosy. Obviously, we've struggled recently, and all of a sudden it's back to could we do with Aubameyang? There's no doubt that we could have done with him in January, as the circumstances have prevailed. But no, I back Arteta on it. I think he's obviously an aging forward anyway. I'm not sure how much more you get out of him. He's not been in the best form for a while. But putting that to the side, the discipline issues, yeah, you've got to back the manager.
I mean, in terms of his future, there's obviously been 2 loan offers from Saudi Arabia. I think it's Al Hilal, and I think Al Nasser is the other club. They're prepared on loan and they're prepared to cover the whole salary. It's unlikely that he wants to go there. There are reportedly clubs interested in Europe. I'm not sure which ones they are, but I don't think they're going to be prepared to cover the full amount of the wages. So Arsenal still have to foot some of the bill. What do you reckon? Do you think this is like the last time Arsenal are going to make this mistake of offering someone in their 30s a massive contract?
You'd like to think so. It's happened obviously a lot. But then Aubameyang's a hard one, because I don't think any fan, Arsenal or otherwise, would have questioned it when he signed the contract. Like, I was desperate for him to sign the contract when he did. We just won the FA Cup. Everyone was talking about him, Arsenal having to get him to sign again. He was at the top of his game. He was challenging Salah or joint with Salah for the Golden Boot. He was unbelievable. He pretty much carried us to the FA Cup in that final. So the way things have turned out aren't ideal, but I don't think the club can take too much criticism. But yeah, like you said, it's a lesson that needs to be learned, and we seem to have done it so many times now. And I think our transfer strategy over the last year or so, particularly the summer window, 2021, showed that we're going for younger players and completely shifted our direction. So it should be all good.
I mean, ultimately with Aubameyang, I suppose that whether you can get him out on loan or someone buys him in this window, he's probably not really going to feature for Arsenal again this season. You wouldn't have thought so. So ultimately, I suppose it doesn't really make any difference whether he stays or whether he goes. But in terms of the search for a new number 9, many names linked. We'll start with Dusan Vlavich. That one is now off the table. He's going to sign for Juventus. They've agreed a €63 million fee for the 21-year-old Fiorentina striker. Webby, what did you think of Arsenal's pursuit of Vlavich? Did you ever allow yourself to believe that this could be a possibility, or did you purely think perhaps that the agents were using Arsenal and a little bit Spurs as like a kind of a bargaining tool?
Yeah, I mean, I never believe a transfer rumour as such until it gets to the final stages, because there's so much that flies around. With Vlavich, it was clear that we wanted him. And I quite like it that the club showed the ambition to go and get a player of his quality, clearly in demand, a good player, would have made an instant impact. There's nothing wrong with the club showing ambition for a plan A number 1 target, essentially to replace Aubameyang / Lacazette and be our number 1 striker. As it turned out, it's not worked out. Don't know whether we've been played a bit, but it takes more than one party to make a transfer, and clearly the player and the agent haven't played ball. I think Fiorentina were willing to entertain him going to Arsenal, but the player and the agent just weren't having it. And it looks like they wanted Juventus all along, and that's come through at the final hour of the transfer window. So yeah, pleased with Arsenal going after and showing ambition of that quality of the player. Can't really criticise it for not working out. But as I'm sure we'll get onto in a minute, how Arsenal react now is quite crucial, I think.
Yeah, and I think there's no shame in like going, at least, as you said, ambition to go for that number 1 target. Another name on the list, there's a few on there. I'm just going to bring it up on the screen now. Young Swedish and Real Sociedad centre forward, Alexander Isak. What are your thoughts on him? He's got a £77 million release clause, which Sociedad would want paying immediately and in full, but Arsenal seem to think they might be able to negotiate something a little bit lower, which I'm not sure if they understand what a release clause is. I think you probably have to meet that in full. What are your thoughts on Alexander Isak? Do you know much about him? Do you think he's the right profile of forward for us? I think he's still very raw. He hasn't scored a lot of goals for Sociedad this season. He'd very much be kind of, I'd almost say one for the future. But I mean, if you're paying £76 million, you sort of want immediate returns, don't you?
Yeah, the problem is in that position bracket of striker, you're paying premium prices regardless. And for a young player like Izak, 76 million is a lot, isn't it? Especially when like you said, you're taking a risk on a player that has shown unbelievable potential at Sociedad. I think last season especially was really good. He was discussed as a target in the summer. I think 17 or 18 league goals last season. I can't remember exactly, but a pretty good return. Not so prolific this season. But on the other hand, you're potentially getting a young player that Arteta could mould. We've been going for younger players in the summer window, so it's clearly the strategy. So I'd back if Arteta and Edu and the team have identified him, then great. I personally think a £76 million deal would be extremely challenging to do in January, as would any of the striker deals. But I like the profile of player. It fits what we've been going for.
I mean, before we move on to another couple of names, what kind of profile of number 9 do you think Arsenal need to be going for? Because obviously, whoever they end up getting, whether it's in this window ideally or in the summer, What profile of centre forward do Arsenal need to like be their number one for the next few seasons?
Yeah, I think the key is being able to well, I know it sounds obvious, a goal scorer, but we've got especially down the left, we've got Kieran Tierney who's got a pretty good delivery, and I think it's been noticeable over the last couple of years when he's played regularly that it doesn't feel like we've kind of made the most of it. Often he's kind of putting these wicked balls in the box, they're not getting on the end of it. You'd expect your striker to be doing that. We've got in the team with Saka, Smith Rowe, Odegaard, we've got the creativity, Martinelli as well. The creativity's there, so I don't necessarily think we need a striker that's going to be dropping ridiculously deep and linking play up like Lacazette is doing at the moment. It's more of that rounded goal scorer, the Vlavich profile. And I'm sure we're going to get on to mention a couple. Calvert Lewin's another player that sort of fits that profile, whether you think he's the right option or not. Good in the air, good at getting on the end of crosses and through balls, bit of pace, bit of strength. That kind of well-rounded striker. Creativity probably isn't the number one thing because we've already got that in the team. So the profile of player they're going for seems quite good, and I can see why they wanted Vlavich. Strong, a presence, good in the air. Clearly a good finisher with his goal scoring record. That obviously would have been perfect, but yeah, the other targets are interesting.
I mean, just last thing on Izak, if he is like genuinely kind of high up the list, I know Vlavich was obviously number one target. If he's like, say, if Izak's number two target, do you think the board just need to get him, pay that, if they really want him, pay that release clause and get him in January? Like, do you think it's I know it's not as simple as that, but do you feel that if Arteta wants him and he's high up on that list, there's a release clause there? If you pay that money, you can get him.
Yeah, I think the challenge is you want to get short-term gains, but you don't want to sacrifice the short-term gains for a long-term option. So Arsenal have clearly got their list of targets. I'm not sure they want to go for almost a backup in January and then lose out on a number one target in the summer, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't think that's worth it. I think the long-term problems that would cause, you're just ultimately pushing back another situation that we've got at the moment where you've got a handful of strikers that you don't really want. If we can't get the kind of top 2 or 3 targets that we want, that he sees the team being built around for the next 3-4 seasons, then I would rather us go for almost like a bit of more of a short-term loan option or something, because you're then potentially losing out on the priority in the summer. January is so tough to do deals. It's literally Newcastle and Villa have got their deals done. Villa because they've obviously got the new manager and they have to. Newcastle because they're trying to pay their way to stay in the Premier League. Like, obviously you've got your frustrations as a Chelsea fan, but it's not just Chelsea, Arsenal that are struggling. It's January is tough to do deals. So be very wary of knee-jerking. Having said that, Isak's been linked with Arsenal for ages. So if that can be done in January, I'm sure he is more of a longer-term option that we'd want.
I mean, you just mentioned him now, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Everton centre forward. Obviously, he's well thought of within Arsenal. I'm not sure how viable a deal would be for him in January. I know Everton are struggling, but he's just back from injury. I'm not really sure what I think of Calvert-Lewin. Like, I think there's ability there, but I'm just not sure if he's like kind of a main striker for a big club. I'm just not quite sure. I don't know how it would work out for him at Arsenal. I mean, he's a good profile. He's strong. He's physical. He's good in the air. I'm sure he'd do well there. What are your thoughts on Calvert-Lewin? And obviously, very unlikely for January, but do you think he could be a potential summer target?
Yeah, I like Calvert-Lewin. I think he's a player that would be brilliant for us as a striker. I think if we had this conversation like a year ago or just before Christmas last year, like every fan in the Premier League would have probably said, oh, it'd been an awesome signing because he was on fire, scoring every week. I think a combination obviously of his fitness and Everton being woeful has probably kind of tarnished his reputation a little bit. But there's no getting away. He's obviously lethal in the air, as good as there is in the league in the air. Got a bit of pace. He's a good enough finisher. So he probably ticks all the boxes. and he's probably desperate to get away from Everton.
He'd be expensive though, wouldn't he?
Yeah, that's the thing. It all comes back, mate, to the fact that January is so tough to do deals. And I mean, are you really going to make a big Premier League transfer? We're talking like an England international, huge player for Everton. Are you really going to make that happen in January? I'm not sure. But if we could, and I would certainly say that Dominic Calvert Lewin boosts our chances of getting top four, which is ultimately the goal now for Arsenal.
I mean, I'll just pose a hypothetical question to you. If it was a toss-up between Calvert Lewin and Izak for January window, who would you be taking?
I mean, I can't say I've watched Izak loads.
No,
to be honest, I've obviously watched all the YouTube stuff. I haven't watched him for a run of games over a long period of time, which means that I probably kind of just biased towards Calvert Lewin just because I know what he does. Hard question to answer. I'd probably quite like us to go for the Premier League option.
Yeah.
Knows the league, could probably hit the ground running over an Izak if you put me on the spot. But again, I probably a bit unfair on Alexander Isak because, as I said, you can't really judge someone from YouTube too much, and I can't admit to watching Sociedad over 90 minutes like too many times.
Yeah, no, I don't think many people have, to be fair, mate. Obviously, last thing on strikers, you mentioned that, if the long-term target isn't possible in January, potentially a loan move. One name that has been doing the rounds I've seen in various reports is Luka Jovic of Real Madrid. Obviously, done very well at Eintracht Frankfurt, got a big money move to Real Madrid. Hasn't really worked out, not really featured. He went back on loan to Frankfurt for the second part of last season. What are your thoughts on Jovic? Do you know much about him? Do you think that could be a suitable short-term solution?
Yeah, I mean, Jovic, before the Real Madrid move at Frankfurt, he was hottest property in Europe, wasn't he? And everyone was kind of linked with him. And I mean, you get a move to Real Madrid, you're clearly doing something right. And the guy deserved it. He was an absolute beast for a while at Frankfurt. Obviously not quite worked out for him at Madrid. We've got obviously a decent relationship with Madrid, signing Odegaard most recently. Not sure whether it would happen or not. I think this sums up the transfer window. I think I woke up this morning and read that it was on, and then within 7 hours there was rumours that it couldn't happen because Real Madrid aren't willing to let him leave. So I don't see that one happening. If he could recover his Frankfurt form, then I think every team in Europe would want him. But again, it's a bit of a risk because it's not quite worked out from him at Madrid. I don't think that one will happen just based on the reports over the last 2 or 3 hours about Madrid not willing to let him go.
I mean, just to round off this little segment, do you feel that in Arsenal's quest for the top four, if you don't sign a centre forward in this window, it's a massive problem? Because at the moment, you've obviously only got Eddie Nketiah, who, no disrespect, probably isn't good enough for Arsenal and isn't going to get you the goals in the Premier League to get you that top four finish. And you've got an ageing Lacazette, and both of these guys are out of contract in the summer as well. I mean, what are your thoughts? Do you feel that if you don't get anyone in the centre forward position, then you haven't got enough?
Yeah, I think we're certainly short. You're pretty much at the moment, like you said, left with Lacazette, who, for all his qualities, isn't scoring goals. And Nketiah has got 1 or 2 league goals in 2 years, and it's like it doesn't take, like you said, he's not you can't see him firing us to top four. And other than that, you'd be left with makeshift options such as playing Pepe up front. He's been in good form at AFCON, or Martinelli, which isn't ideal. You need a striker. To answer your question, yeah, I think it'd be a huge blow if we didn't land the target now. And by Arsenal kind of putting it on the line for Vlavich, they've almost played their cards, and Arteta's almost said, look, we need it. We need a striker. Otherwise, it will be challenged to get top four. Hence why we've only scored 1 goal in 2022 so far. So yeah, we're all hoping the next week goes well and we land a deal that's going to boost our chances of top four.
Yeah, I mean, and with only one game a week now for the remainder of the season, there's all the eggs are in the top four basket. There really aren't really too many excuses now. I feel the Cronkies have got to back Arteta with a striker, because as we've touched on, it could be the difference between getting back in that Champions League football or ultimately missing out. I just want to quickly bring this question up before we move on to some midfield targets. It's probably referring to Aubameyang. Why do you feel that Arsenal go through so many captains?
Because Emery appointed 5 back when he was manager. I think it was the Spanish kind of thing he brought to Arsenal, and he appointed all the captains, and it didn't quite work out. And then I think when Arteta joined, there wasn't a standout leader as such. We had players like Luis, and he gave it to Aubameyang. Probably just gave it to the best player. I think we've got leaders now. I think you look on the pitch, you've got Ben White, the leader. Gabriel's got a good presence on the pitch. Ramsdale brings great personality. Tierney, even Odegaard, captain of his national team, Norway. We've got leaders now. I think Arsenal fans like the idea of us appointing a set captain. Xhaka is still clearly a big leader at Arsenal as well. Whether he could get the captaincy again based on what's happened in the past is questionable. Lacazette's obviously been captain in the interim while we haven't got an official club captain with Aubameyang out. So it'll be interesting who he goes for. I'd personally like us to go for either Kieran Tierney or Martin Odegaard. But we'll see what happens. But yeah, I think to answer George's question, I just think it's been because Emery appointed 5, and then our captain told our fans to, off, and then Aubameyang turned up late to training every day. So that's why we've gone through so many.
Yeah, no, fair. I mean, mate, let's get onto that midfield now. Obviously,
yeah,
light in a centre forward position, pretty light in the middle of the park as well. Obviously, Xhaka, disciplinary issues. Thomas Partey, obviously suspended as well. Got El Neni out at AFCON still with Egypt, and you've got Lokonga as well. Pretty light in the middle of the park. Obviously, a centre forward is probably more important than a central midfield player. But having said that, Arsenal have been looking at midfield players. We're going to come to one straight away. Juventus midfielder Arthur, obviously involved in an odd swap deal. One of those kind of ones that tries to balance the books in some sort of dodgy way, where he went from Barca to Juve and they got Pjanic from Juventus, and it didn't really work out for anyone. Arsenal want a straight 6-month loan deal. Juventus playing kind of hardball. They want 18 months loan with, I think, an option to buy. What are your thoughts on? Do you know much about Arthur? And do you feel that Arsenal, if they only want a 6-month loan deal, shouldn't be forced into an 18-month deal?
Yeah. So firstly, on the midfielder front, I don't think a midfielder should be our priority. I think if we were going to get a midfielder, we should have done it before the run of games we've just had, because that's when we were short. Like the El Neni and Partey went to AFCON, Xhaka was out, etc. I think we've kind of come through that now, and by our next game, Wolves, I think the 10th of February, we'll have players back, and we'll go back to having Xhaka, Partey, El Neni, and Sambi Lokonga, which I think with one game a week for the rest of the season, will get us through. So I don't actually think we need to be going after a midfielder now, unless it's going to be a midfielder that we want for the long term. So Arthur, great player, technically good, Barcelona previously, and he's a clearly good player. I don't necessarily think we need him. I think we should be focusing on the striker like we've discussed. I would prefer us to go for a longer term option. I'm not sure if you've got them listed, but here, Ruben Neves, Douglas Luiz, Bruno Gumarez from Lyon, Tyler Adams from Leipzig. I'd rather us go for one of them as a longer term if it's available than do some loan deal that really once Xhaka, Partey and El Neni are back, we probably don't really need.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, one other condition to that loan deal, this loan deal, but it could be with any midfield player coming in, is that if Artur did come in on loan, then Granit Xhaka would be allowed to leave the club potentially on loan and join Roma. It was close in the summer, didn't quite happen. If a midfield player does come in, he would be allowed to move on. What would your thoughts be on Xhaka leaving this window potentially?
Yeah, I'd rather him stay. I know he's got like a horrible disciplinary record and he drives people crazy. Completely understand that. I was just as frustrated as anyone at Anfield in that away end when he hauled down Jota and made it tough for us. Like, we've seen it before. Having said that, we are a better team with Xhaka in it. And I go back to that brilliant run we went on before the new year. Xhaka was important to that. And as I said, with the limited football we've got now, just focusing on the league, Granit Xhaka in the midfield will be a better team for it. Whether he's staying longer term or not, I don't think so. But I think with Xhaka in the midfield, we've got a shot at top four. So I'd rather him not go. I'd rather not have to integrate a new player at the cost of someone that we already have, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, let's just bring up some information on a target you just talked about, Bruno Gumarez, the Lyon and Brazil midfield player. Apparently, according to Fabrizio Romano, obviously very reliable source, he's at the top of Arsenal's list of midfield targets, but Lyon are requesting between 40 to 45 million euros, which makes a January deal complicated. We've also said it's difficult to do deals in January. Also been linked with midfield players from Lyon before. Houssem Aouar, one linked with all the time, never quite happened. Do you feel this could be another one? And do you think this would be a good signing? I mean, if Arsenal can get this deal done in January, if he is top of the list, it would make sense, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, he's a top player. He's a player that Arsenal clearly really want, and if we could get him in January, then it'd be a brilliant signing because it is a longer term signing, and you can have him in the first team for a long period of time. So that'd be amazing. But literally as we speak, I'm just reading that Newcastle have put in a 40 million euro offer for him. And apparently they're willing to pay like triple his wages or something.
Yeah, of course they are.
That could be a big challenge for Arsenal. And I guess that'll say a lot about the player. Do you want to go and potentially fight for a Champions League spot with Arsenal, or do you want to go to a relegation scrap and go for the money with Newcastle? It'll be really interesting to see how that pans out over the next 24, 48 hours because I think literally, as we're speaking, it's all last hour or two. It's been reported that Newcastle in for him, but I mean that'd be gutting, wouldn't it, to lose one of your main transfer targets to Newcastle just because they're earning in their pocket.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair though, Newcastle couldn't get Diego Carlos out of Sevilla. They held firm on the valuation, and they've ended up keeping him. So I mean, I think Newcastle, well, that's a bit of a tangent. They're going to struggle to attract players. I know like they got money to throw at it, but the project still isn't that attractive at the moment because they're in a relegation battle. So I think Arsenal will probably have a bit more pulling power over Newcastle still.
Think so.
Yeah, we'd like to think so. In terms of just a couple of other midfield targets, just briefly, links to Jorginho Wijnaldum, potential loan move. I don't know if they're slightly wide of the mark. I know he's potentially in talks to be involved in a loan swap deal at Tottenham with Ndombele going to PSG. Any update on potential links with Arsenal or kind of really just paper talk?
Yeah, again, I think Wijnaldum's a deal that would have been useful about 3 weeks ago now, and he could have played the two Liverpool fixtures, maybe the Forest fixture, the Burnley fixture. Not particularly fussed by a loan deal for him now. Clearly a good player, eye for goal. Premier League, he's done well for Liverpool over the years, done well for Newcastle. It was Newcastle as well, wasn't it? And so I'd be surprised if we went for him. Just like mainly because what I've mentioned. I think we're by our next game, we're going to have our players back.
Yeah.
So it would seem odd to kind of go for a midfielder. I'd rather us just spend that money and time just getting that striker in. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if he does move on to Spurs, like you mentioned as well.
I mean, last thing on midfield. Obviously, you reeled off some of those targets there, and I think it's in an article by The Athletic. Long-term midfield targets, so the likes of Douglas Luiz from Aston Villa, Tyler Adams at Leipzig, and Ruben Neves from Wolves. Do those names excite you? Are those the sort of names that Arsenal should be going for, or is that kind of where Arsenal are at the moment in terms of a club and in terms of their kind of operating power in the market?
I think it's smart signings. I think Neves and Luiz especially, because we know quite a lot about them in the Premier League. Like Ruben Neves is a top player.
Yeah, he's good.
You watch him play, he's brilliant. It would almost be like, I know it's obvious signing from Wolves, but Liverpool dipped into Wolves for Jota, and he's been absolutely awesome. I think Neves is the same level. He's that good a player that he comes in and he improves most teams in the league, really. Douglas Luiz as well, a very good technical midfielder at Villa. Was awesome for them last season, especially when they had Grealish in the team and they really were a force. So I really like those two options. Preference would be Neves. I think it'd be awesome to get Ruben Neves in. I think we've discussed him before as a target for Arsenal. So I like the names we're being linked with. And to be honest, I kind of trust Arteta.
Yeah.
The way the summer window worked out, Tomiyasu's been a revelation. Ramsdale has been awesome. Tavares has shown his value as a young kind of raw talent. And Odegaard has been fantastic. So, and obviously Ben White as well. Everyone was like joking about his transfer fee. He's turned out to be brilliant for us. So the summer window worked out really well, even though it was heavily criticised. So when we get linked with these names now, I have a lot more confidence than over the last 2, 3, 4, 5 seasons where we've just made some absolutely horrendous transfer decisions.
I mean, yeah, and just kind of just to round off really, mate, in terms of outgoings, just a couple of thoughts on the players that have left. Obviously, Maitland-Niles has gone on loan to Roma. Pablo Mari's departed to Udinese, and I'm not sure if there's any others so far. But what are your thoughts on those two departures? Kind of fair enough. Don't really need them at Arsenal at the moment. Yeah,
Pablo Mari, good player, probably not quite good enough for Arsenal is the general consensus. So he's got his move. Maitland-Niles, we could have done with him like over the last few weeks. I think he would have played in the FA Cup. He probably would have played against Liverpool. Could even have played against Burnley as well. So I think in hindsight we could have done with him. Having said that, Arteta made it pretty clear that Maitland-Niles went to him and was desperate to get a move to play regular football. But I'm not quite sure. I don't know. I don't know how much of a difference he would have made.
Yeah,
he probably would have played. He'd have got some minutes, but I don't know whether it would have necessarily changed the results. The only other one is Leno. I think Newcastle maybe trying to sign Bernd Leno, and we might be trying to get. I wasn't familiar with him, but a guy called Matt Turner, who's a US.
He's the MLS, isn't he?
Yeah, New England Revolution. He's an USA international keeper, so he's going to be a good player. Can't say I know anything about him, but that's a potential deal that might get done in the next week. Leno to Newcastle, and we sign Matt Turner from the MLS.
I mean, how would you feel about Leno leaving? I mean, I know he has been number one. He's been ousted now by Ramsdale. Probably is maybe looking to move on. If you can sell him to Newcastle and then a number 2 from the MLS comes in, I suppose it's kind of a good deal for all parties involved, I suppose.
Yeah, Leno's too good to be a number 2. No matter what people think of him, he's got his strengths, he's got his weaknesses, but he's a number 1 goalkeeper, German international, fantastic shot stopper. Ramsdale's just clearly come in and been an absolute revelation for us. Everyone loves his personality. He's been one of our players of the season, albeit he's dropped off a tiny bit in the last few games. Not entirely his fault, but I wouldn't mind if he went. You've got to think of the player's situation. Like he's not going to sit on a bench for the rest of the next 2-3 years at Arsenal. So yeah, probably a good decision. And he'd plenty of minutes in Newcastle, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, 100%. So that pretty much rounds out all the Arsenal transfer news. It's going to be an interesting last sort of 5 or 6 days in the market. See if that elusive number 9 does come in. Well, before I let you go, mate, going to slightly put you on the spot. Are Arsenal going to get the top 4 this season? As things stand at the moment, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, we're
All
getting top 4. Yes, we're getting top 4. I'll speak to the end of the season and look back on that. But yeah.
Mate, and you can look forward to getting battered by Bayern Munich again next season.
Oh, mate, I'll take that. Give me that any day. Well, I took it for granted, those 5-1s. We took it for granted.
Yeah. Nah, good stuff, guys. That pretty much rounds out the stream. Good point. Good, seems like a good place to end, guys. Make sure you follow Luke on Twitter. I've linked it in the video description below, and it's across the banner at the bottom of the screen as well. So do give him a follow and check out his stuff. As always, thanks for joining in live. Please do smash a like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel. 300 subscribers is the aim by the end of this month, so please do help us out. Webby, thanks so much for your time, mate. Really appreciate it. Good to catch up as always. And guys, we'll catch you again in the next couple of days with some Chelsea news. So thanks as always.